Good morning. Welcome to the Planning and Economic Development Subcommittee. It's April 2nd, 2019. I am calling this meeting to order. I will call to the public, and it doesn't look like I have any cards. So the first item is minutes of the meeting of approval for March 13th, 2019. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve. Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes. I have Councilman Nowakowski on the phone. I have a note here somewhere. I believe for the consent items, it's 2 through 5. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. So consent items 2 through 5. Does anybody want to hear anything? Need to pull anything?
Just comments on 4.
Okay. Can we, well, let's go to 4.
Okay.
We would like to talk about Deck Park. Councilwoman Mendoza has some questions.
Cindy, I just want to thank you for putting out this RFP. Affordable and workforce housing is a need in downtown Phoenix, and to see this going out, it means a lot. It means a lot in District 8, and for any resident that in the future wants to move to downtown, it's a great opportunity. So thank you so much for putting this RFP out. Thank you.
Do I have a motion for consent items 2 through 5?
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries. I have for request for item number 6. I have a request by staff to continue item number 6 to clear up funding for project.
Do we have a date?
To June 4th.
Okay.
Ms. Stotler, could you please explain why we're continuing the item?
Yes, Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee, Santa Fe Springs Apartment is a 310-unit affordable property located at 1717 West Glendale Avenue in District 5. Santa Fe Springs Apartments was purchased by the Phoenix Residential Investment Development Effort, or the PRIDE board, which is a 501c3 run through the Housing Department. We purchased it in 2010 using federal home and neighborhood stabilization funds. There's currently a loan on this property of $13.5 million in federal funding, and there are requirements with that federal funding as to how we will sell a property and possibly subordinate that loan to a new loan from new owners. So at this point, we are still negotiating on the terms of the financing from the new owners, and whatever financing they provide to us has to conform with the HUD plan that we submitted for both home and neighborhood stabilization funds. So it's a little complicated working through all of those terms, so we're asking for a 2-month continuance to continue working on the financing terms to make sure that it conforms with all the HUD plans and requirements.
And when you use the term subordinate, what does that mean?
That means to put our loan further down on the waterfall. So for payment, we would be secondary to a primary loan, such as a mortgage or a low-income housing tax credit or some other formal loan.
Okay. I got schooled on it last night by someone called me last night to explain it to me, and I was like, oh, okay. I didn't really understand, but at the time they broke it down for me, what it means to subordinate. If we subordinate, does that mean that property will always stay affordable housing?
The subordination just is in regards to the financing and the loan that we have of federal funds. We also have a land use restriction agreement that we are putting on this property, a 40-year land use restriction agreement that keeps it affordable for a minimum of 40 years.
Okay. That was what I was asked last night, and I was like, I don't know. Okay, thank you. So until June 4th, 2019. Okay. That continued? All right. Item 7. Hi,
Good morning, Madam Chair. Members
hope
of
you're
the
feeling well.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. Today with me is Xander Keating, Program Manager with Community Economic Development, and we'll be giving you an overview of the RFP process and recommendation for a successful bidder for the sale and development of 2 human services extra parcels. And with that, I'll hand it off to Xander.
Thank you. Morning, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. So this particular parcel was, it was purchased in 2006 as part of the purchase for the Family Advocacy Center, and it was purchased at that time for the potential for future parking. There was a garage that went along with the office building that was purchased for the center, but there was a thought at the time that maybe in the future some garage or some additional parking would be needed. Over time, obviously, we're 13 years later, we've never found that we've needed any additional parking. So the city is looking to dispose of this parcel. As you can see here on the screen, it's a large vacant piece of property immediately to the west along Holly Street, where this particular parcel is located. So in April of 2018, the city issued a request for proposals for this site. 5 proposals were actually received. In July of last year, a panel reviewed those proposals, and there was a selected proposer out of those proposals, and we began negotiations. We've come to some agreement on business terms and started the community outreach at the beginning of this year, January, February of this year. Now on to the developer. We have a selected group. It is JAG Development and Studio Ma have come together to propose a development for this parcel. Here's a couple of their existing projects. They're a small, relatively small anyway, local development group. They've done a number of projects in Central Phoenix. That's really where their focus is. The 2 on the left pictures up here are both JAG. 2 on the right are Studio Ma, so you can see they have developed a number of actually very similar projects to what we're bringing forward today here in Central Phoenix. And all of these projects are right here in Central Phoenix. Now with the project, so they are proposing, this particular lot is just over half an acre. They're proposing 8 single-family attached units for the property. Each of those units would be 2 stories. It would have 2 parking spaces, likely in a garage on the property. One of the key components that they really emphasized with their development was a common space theme in the development. One of the things we heard from the community was they wanted some space for the community to be able to interact on the property, and so this developer is proposing a very robust common space that kind of permeates throughout the entire site. Some of the business terms that we've agreed to, purchase price is $250,000, which is above the appraised value of $242,000. They will need to rezone this property. Currently, the site is only allows for parking at zone P2, and so we would require that they rezone the site prior to actually transferring title of the property. The developer, from our discussions, intends to pretty quickly file for that rezoning and start moving through that process as quickly as possible. And then, of course, we have a number of performance benchmarks. We require that we enter into contracts within 6 months. There is a timeline for the rezoning that they would need to get through that process as well. And then they would have 2 years to complete construction once they commence construction. So some of the benefits of the site. First is would be new for sale product in downtown. It's something that we've really started to hear from the community and the business groups that is lacking is for sale, brand new for sale product. Well, not in downtown, adjacent to downtown and in our central core. Midtown, yes. So we're very excited about that. Of course, this new housing right along light rail. There's a light rail station very close to this in Canto light rail station is only about 2 blocks at the most from this particular location. Of course, neighborhood stabilization. This is a vacant lot that has caused some problems for the community in the past, and so really activating that will help to stabilize the neighborhood. And of course, activating the vacant lot brings it back onto the tax rolls. It's now would be a productive use for the community as well. And then finally, we can't ignore the $3.1 million investments that the developers are proposing to make into this particular site. With that, we are here to request the subcommittee recommend city council authorization to enter into agreements with JAG Development and Studio Ma for the development of this piece of property. And with that, we're available for any questions.
I think my colleagues, you have any questions?
How much is a square foot?
It's a little bit over 24,000 square feet. We can get you the exact number if you would like.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve and forward to council.
Do we have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We are on item 8. We are, Councilwoman Stark asked for an update on the Rio Salado, and so we have a large team to give us an update. So go ahead, Karen.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, members of the subcommittee. We do indeed have a large team. Allow me to introduce our group here. Of course, from the Parks Department, we have Alonzo Avicia, Will Bissett from Community Economic Development, Alan Stevenson, Planning and Development, and Brandy Kelso down at the end from Water Services. As you can see, this is a large team. This effort in the Rio Salado is something that's been going on for many decades. This is just a portion of the working group, the interdepartmental working group that gets together periodically to talk about where we are with our various projects and how they fit into the broader context. In addition to the departments that are represented here, Public Works is involved with our working group, as well as the offices of environmental programs and government relations. So I want to acknowledge all of them. It's a big set of projects. As you know, this has been going on for many decades and encompasses a number of activities that we'll get into in some detail. This area, which is now we refer to as Rio Reimagined, encompasses more than 45 miles, and this particular map is not particularly readable here, so I will call your attention. I believe staff has shared with you a map that the Corps of Engineers produced that is at your place, I hope, which places some of this in a context as well. But let me say that along this 45 miles, we have a lot of different topographies, a lot of different environments and players that are involved. A year ago, the various jurisdictions along this 45-mile area came together and executed what we call a statement of intent. And the intent is that all of these jurisdictions will cooperate and work to revitalize the entirety of the corridor. What you'll see up there working from west to east are the city of Buckeye, the city of Goodyear, the Gila River Indian Community, looks like Avondale's in there, of course the city of Phoenix, the city of Tempe, the city of Mesa, and the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian Community. In addition to those jurisdictions, Maricopa County is also signing on to this work to work together, collaborate, and bring the entirety of this corridor to life. And so we are working with them, but in Phoenix, we are particularly focused on the projects in our segment of the river. As I think you all know, those projects are in a few categories, but all the work that has happened in the Rio Salado over the course of many decades since the 1990s has been facilitated, funded, encouraged by the late Congressman Ed Pastor, who really took the lead on getting funding and working with the Army Corps of Engineers to make these things happen. So let me talk to you about what the three pieces are, and we're going to go into some detail on the team here. So to the east, we have the Rio Salado. This portion of the project is largely complete, but we'll talk to you about the latest developments there. In the middle, we have what's called Rio Salado Oeste, and that eastern boundary is 19th Avenue, and that stretches all the way over to the west on 83rd Avenue. And then to the far west, the Tres Rios Wetlands Project. So to talk a little bit about what specifically is happening there, the most recent developments in each of these, I'm going to ask us to start on the east, and Alonso will talk about Rio Salado.
Thank you, Karen. Madam Chair, members of the board, our subcommittee, thank you for your time. Alonso Vitia, Deputy Director in the Natural Resources Division. I get the pleasure to talk a little bit about our center section here of Phoenix, which is the Rio Salado Habitat Restoration Area. And this portion of the Rio Salado is basically from 24th Street over to 19th Avenue in this section. So if you had an opportunity to visit, you're at least driving through it from south to North Phoenix at one of the major thoroughways there. But it's an amazing place, place for not only habitat but for recreational use. In 2005, it was open to the public. It was open to the public to provide a passive recreational opportunity for the public to not only enjoy what the environment there is, but really bring that condition back for the habitat as well. This area approximately represents 595 acres of property, which is approximately 5 miles across the Phoenix there. So a very impressive swath of property there. Again mentioned, this is an opportunity to get the public interactive with the Rio Salado Habitat Restoration Area. We have a total of 6 trailheads, major trailheads along this corridor here where people can park, access restrooms, access the trail system, and of course get the education, whether it's led by our park ranger staff or on their own and do some bird watching. So it's a great opportunity for that as well. Along with biking, hiking, jogging, you can imagine all these different opportunities there. Partnerships along the way, of course, on Central is our Nina Mason Pulliam Audubon Center. So that center, of course, is there focused with education to the public, and they really do their own performance of education and interaction with the public, and we obviously are there to help complement that, and they complement our education as well. So if folks visit the Audubon Center, they're also able to venture out into the Rio Salado in general by themselves again and to interact with that property. Mentioned a little bit of our goals with the Rio Salado, which one was obviously bring public into the space and provide recreational opportunity, but an underlier as well, and very prominent at the time, was rehabitat and habitation and sustainability for not only the plants and animals there, but obviously the overall habitat to have it return back to its normal function. So create a really sustainable balance of that opportunity here at the Rio Salado, which is really one of the main focuses for this piece that we're talking about now. With over 180 different species there, we really accomplished that. Credit to the park ranger staff, the maintenance staff who maintain that on a daily basis. I apologize I missed. This is obviously under the operation of the Parks and Recreation Department, more specific, the Natural Resources Division of the Parks and Recreation Department, who maintain it on a daily basis. Mentioned earlier today, at least to the east side, a lot going on in a daily operation to keep this facility open and maintained, not only from a recreational standpoint, but also from a water management standpoint, because it is obviously still a river, and we do accept obviously a lot of the storm runoff water that is done throughout the valley. One of the most recent highlights that we had was this Rio Salado pathway, and you see a portion here in this last picture of it. And it could be relatively small in scope, meaning it's only 1.4 miles in length as far as a trail system or a pathway, but what it really did was connect Phoenix down to Tempe now. So theoretically, individuals can start off from one end of Phoenix here and ultimately end up in Tempe and Scottsdale if they use their recreational mode, whether it's bicycle, walking, hiking. If you want to walk or jog that far, you can definitely do that as well. But most people enjoy that obviously through a bike scenario. With that said, I'll answer any questions at the end or now if you like, and I'll turn it over to William.
Councilman Nowakowski.
Yeah, so one of the reasons that we really asked for more of a community input, because we were going through the light rail down Central Avenue, a lot of people were saying that they felt there wasn't enough community input on the Rio Salado project from 19th Avenue to about 7th Street, 16th Street, and that they wanted to make sure that this, when they talk about recreation, that it's more family type of recreation where they have picnics and green space and stuff like that. Because people were really surprised thinking that it was going to be more of an open space for people to wander and not just ride bikes and hike, but also to have outdoor gatherings and stuff like that. So I know that we talked about the OSTA and making sure that we do a lot more of the community outreach and make sure that we get people's input on that. Just want to reaffirm that.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm going to be talking about some of the efforts economic development has been engaging in because there's a kind of a growing interest in companies locating and expanding in the downtown area. 3 of the properties that we're going to be talking about are where economic development has really invested some of its early efforts. To begin with, though, we wanted to begin by discussing the Rio Salado Beyond the Banks study. It was a report or a plan published in 2003 by the Planning and Development Department that really lays out some of the guidelines and principles and recommendations for development in this core area. It's a component of the efforts that always kind of steer economic development or developments in the area. And one of the recommendations that came about because of it was the redevelopment of the Del Rio landfill. It's approximately between 16th Street and 24th Street on the south bank. In 2018, Council authorized CED to issue an RFP for redevelopment of the site. At that time, they received 2 proposals. After evaluating those proposals, they found them to be non-responsive, and unfortunately, we canceled that RFP. Though we canceled that RFP, we are actively marketing this site with users. So, the next property we want to talk about is just to the west of Central Avenue. It's a former gravel pit site. CED, kind of working with the owner of the property, it knows that this site is currently being marketed to a buyer, and that they're in the final stages of finalizing a buyer for that property. Finally, the former 19th Ave landfill. Even though it represents a fairly significant portion of land here in the area, it's a site that has some challenges for redevelopment, so CED just continues to work with Public Works to make sure that this property is ready to bring to market. So, with that, any questions? I'll turn it on over.
One
What-
question.
Sure.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
So on the formal gravel pit, what's that zone?
I believe it's the former CMEX site,
Right.
To the
And
west.
what's the zoning on that?
Commercial?
Chairwoman and Councilman Nowakowski, I believe the zoning is A1 industrial zoning.
Okay. So there's no way for us to change the zoning on that or anything, right? Once it's,
Well, the zoning has rights to it in A1.
Right.
I think depending on what happens with the light rail line, if that gets built on South Central, whoever owns that property is going to likely want to rezone the site to allow residential and some type of mixed-use commercial, office kind of project, in which case they would want to rezone because the A1's not a residential zoning district.
perfect. Yeah, because one of the problems we're having on the Rio Salado project is that it's all warehouses and industrial parks being built on the side of it. So when you talk about beyond the Rio Salado, there's not really that much beyond it besides big warehouses and industrial parks. So if there's somehow some way we can make it more community friendly, more open space, that would be great. Thank you.
So, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, we're going to move to the Rio Oeste area, which is this area in purple here, and that is 19th Avenue to 83rd Avenue. And So, this is the area where we hope to really start working like we did with the Rio Salado project, as well as the habitat restoration project. Really, the habitat restoration is what's happening inside the banks that Alonzo just described, but then the Beyond the Banks plan is what governs kind of the outside, and so that's how you attract private investment, how you get those areas to transition over time. And so the Rio Oeste project is just really in the early data gathering stages of what we ultimately hope will be more success, like we have done with Beyond the Banks, but also some changes that could be related to things like Councilman Nowakowski just mentioned in terms of maybe having additional green space. Some of those kind of components could be built in as part of this effort.
Alan, before you move forward,
Oh, sorry.
in that area, because I'm hearing that the habitat, preservation of the habitat in the area, my question to that is when Beyond the Banks, or when activity starts on the banks, what does that do to the habitat? Because I think if we start to really create what I see on Tempe Town Lake, then the habitat is interrupted. And so I guess this is the question for all, in thinking that way, because now we have people, a lot more people interacting, we have a lot more noise, we have cars moving in. So I think we have to think broader, in the sense of what's the impact, and what is it, specifically since we're wanting to draw people onto the banks.
So, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, that's a great point. I think part of what we will look at as part of the data gathering process is what are the existing privately held parcels and what are those used for? So a lot of them are heavy industrial, sand and gravel operations, ones that are going to be just as impactful to any wildlife or the river as anything else that would come there. And so whether or not the actual improvements inside the banks look more like what we did with Rio Salado, look more like Tempe Town Lake, look like some version in between there, that's all future discussions. What it really comes down to is how do we begin to do some data collection in this Rio Oeste area right now, so that we can then figure out where do we want to go with this big stretch of the river. Because we really haven't gone down to that next stage with that, and this is the early parts of that.
So what I'm hearing is that there's still a lot of development and still a lot of ability to really design, with community input, what that section would look like.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. So this is a
Ellen.
blow up of that Rio Oeste area.
Councilwoman
Oh,
Mendoza
I'm
has
sorry.
A couple of months ago, the city created a task force or a committee. Can you talk about that for this area?
So it's a great way if I can
Okay,
go
go
through.
ahead.
We're gonna talk about that, and then I'll be happy to add on to that. So you can see this Rio Oeste, the larger purple area is kind of the Beyond the Banks area, if you will, where we're looking at this corridor along this stretch of the Rio Salado River. And so in 2018, the City of Phoenix was awarded an EPA technical assistance grant to develop a community vision and charrette around this area. And so that's the project that you just spoke about, Councilwoman Mendoza, where we have asked District 7 and 8 and District 4 and the mayor's office to give us some people to really do a planning for this charrette event. So the charrette will be open to the public. We'll do some broad outreach associated with that, but that will really be a convening of property owners, business owners, other community residents and stakeholders in the area to say, what do we want to do with this stretch of the river and a big picture standpoint, and those areas right outside the banks. And so that's really what this grant will do. It's a small grant, as you can see. We don't, the consultant is someone that's on the EPA's list to hire, and so we were able to pick from that, but it's not a bigger, broader project. So this really does give us a kind of entry level into that discussion with the community, and what will come out of that will be a lot of list of, here's some other things that need to take place, in terms of We anticipate probably a report coming out of that sometime this summer towards the end that will come back to the subcommittee and the council and let you guys know. But that's really where we'll start looking at what are those next steps, like a Beyond the Banks type area plan. How do we work with the larger Rio Reimagine project? How do we work with Arizona Rock Products Association and their sand and gravel members who have a lot of property along there, and they have concerns about this we have to work through. So it'll be those types of things that will come out of this initial, $60,000 grant and planning process. With that, I'm happy to answer questions, or we can go on to Trace Rios.
Okay, Trace Rios. If you haven't been there, come out and see us. It's fabulous. We have about 700 acres of wetlands, over 150 birds and animals in the area. But let me tell you a little bit about the history of Trace Rios. It was actually built and constructed with our sub-regional operating group, the SHROG, as you might know them. It's a partnership with Scottsdale, Mesa, Tempe, Glendale, and Phoenix. We built this in conjunction with the Army Corps of Engineers. And it's actually an add-on to our 91st Avenue wastewater treatment plant. So it takes effluent from the plant and puts I'll call it polishing or finish on the effluent so that it's then able to go out into the environment. And so it's really a natural type of treatment. This part of Trace Rios went into operation in 2009, 2010. What's been built so far is really what we needed from a treatment aspect. But early on, there was always a vision to have trails, trails through here to connect people to the wetlands, to the water, to the environment. And so a little bit about that. Obviously, with funding issues, kind of at the end of the project, we didn't get to build everything that's envisioned, but we've slowly been able to start building that. Right now, we have about 3 miles of trail system around Trace Rios, and we're currently working through the design of a 91st Avenue trail system. So currently, if you want to come visit us, you kind of have to park along the road off to the side along 91st Avenue. But this trailhead will allow parking in the area, provides for safety, and then access to the facility. The other thing that the Water Department has envisioned over the years is a proposed educational center. This will actually help us connect and talk to schools and citizens about that connection between the built environment and the natural environment, as well as to tell the story as to why the wetlands is needed for the treatment processes. The educational center would have classrooms and those kind of things as well. With that, I'll take any questions you might have on Trace Rios. Okay, back to Karen.
So if I just in conclusion, our projects fit within this broader context, as I said at the outset, and so we continue to meet and discuss opportunities with our regional partners. The next thing, as was described in the report, that is likely to happen is that EPA is going to designate the region as one of its urban waters federal partnership areas. And if that does take place later this spring, then an ambassador would be brought on board who would help coordinate all the federal involvement in these projects. So, as you know, the Corps of Engineers has been in the lead as they have jurisdiction over the flood control aspects of the work. But EPA, HUD, Department of Transportation, et cetera, all have reason to be involved here, and so the ambassador would coordinate all of those efforts, so we look forward to that. With that, we'd be really happy to answer any questions about the ongoing work.
Okay. Councilwoman Stark.
Well, I want to first thank you for the update. I really appreciate it. Even though I don't represent the area, I know this is a jewel in the desert, and I know it's a legacy for your dad, as well as Senator John McCain. And I'm excited to see that we continue to progress in this area. It's very exciting. I see this as a real potential for the city of Phoenix. So thanks for the update.
Councilman Nowakowski.
Now, the portion that Senator McCain wanted, he was talking about maybe like like a little canal system like San Antonio has and stuff like that, right?
Right, Madam Chair, Councilman Nowakowski. So when Senator McCain got re-involved with this project, he was at an event at Tempe Town Lake and thought, why can't we bring more economic development to the entire region along those lines? We've worked pretty closely with his staff, and then, of course, since his passing, with other folks to talk about what the potential is. Our focus, as you've heard here today, in our stretch of the river has been on habitat restoration and economic development with community involvement. And so our hope is that this project doesn't look necessarily like a bunch of town lakes, but as a series of projects that are coherent and work together. So the Riverwalk idea is one idea, but honestly, we wouldn't retrofit Rio Salado to do that. That would undo a lot of very expensive work that we've done over the years. But we're open to alternatives in the other parts of our area of the river.
Councilwoman Mendoza.
But that doesn't mean that it can't happen in Rio Oeste, correct?
Correct, that's right.
Okay.
And that this is very early on, and we will look forward to working with all the partners and the community to envision what we'll do there.
Okay, because what we're hearing is for the Oeste is more of the San Antonio River, economic development, green space. So I want to make sure that, that their voices are heard. Thank you.
So I want to thank the update. It's obviously moving. I believe that whoever's sitting at the Sun Devil Stadium looking out at Tempe Town Lake would not be looking at it due to the fact that it was a vision of Mayor Neil Giuliano and my dad to make sure that was an economic hub for Tempe. And as that grew and as they worked on that piece, the vision had always been for him to activate the river bottom instead of having used tires, trash, you name it, that was in that area for over, I would say, 30 years. I'm going to age myself. For 30 years of crossing the bridge, and that's what you would view as you would cross the bridge and go into South Phoenix. And his vision was to clean that up along with the community's vision. He didn't do anything in silo or by himself. He always did it with the community. And with the community's vision to have that built and make it prosperous and make it economically viable for that area, and to turn, in particular, the conversation or the story of South Phoenix. And so if anything, he was not able to complete the vision in the sense of seeing it all, because that was one of his goals before he left Congress, was to complete it. And so he has not been able, he'll be able to see it in spirit, but I am determined to get it completed. I am determined to work with the McCains, but I'm also determined to make sure the history is pure and the facts are clear of who really built Rio Salado. So I really appreciate it, and thank you for doing this. So thank you. So we are now on to item 9. And I need somebody, well, so I need an explanation as to, we were hearing item 9 quite some time in the committee, and then the vote took place in the Transportation Committee. So I need some explanation as to why. I think the public needs to understand why the vote took place in the Transportation Committee. because I think people were under the understanding that the vote was going to be taken here. So if somebody could please explain that, and then I have some other comments on it.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, originally this particular item had been reviewed and recommended by the Citizens Transportation Committee, and it is a transit-owned site and property. So staff realized that it really should have been in the Transportation Subcommittee, and so that's why the item was moved there for recommendation, but it's here today for information and discussion. It will ultimately still have to go to the full council, because as you all know, but for the public, you make a recommendation to the council. The council will ultimately take action on this item.
Okay. And then my other comments.
I have
go ahead.
So that means any property owned by the parks would have to go through a different subcommittee if we're gonna build in downtown? This is the first time I've ever heard of this, really. I can understand that to making sure that the public transportation component stays there, that's one thing. But we have all kinds of different properties in downtown Phoenix that's owned by different departments. So I'm just wanting some clarification, which departments actually come to this subcommittee and which ones don't. And the other thing is, anything built in downtown Phoenix, my understanding, would run through this department, would run through the subcommittee. So I'm kind of confused, right?
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, we can ultimately take items to multiple subcommittees, but we try to only take action at one specific subcommittee. So in the future, we can ensure that they do get on dual subcommittees and determine what the best venue is for the action to be taken.
Councilwoman Mendoza.
I'm on the transportation subcommittee, and I was a little confused as well why it was here first, then transportation, and that's the reason I asked that transportation subcommittee to be brought back to downtown. So to make sure that my colleagues here were aware of it, because it started here. So just want to make sure that put that out there.
So I was asked about the proposals, why this proposal was chosen. There were I believe three people. The third, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, so I'm going to go up. The third proposer, and I don't have the proposer's name in front of me. I was looking for it, but I don't have it. That proposer did not follow, and I studied all three proposals, did not follow what was asked or requested by the request RFP, and did not follow the RFP. So that's what I understood and read with the third proposal. Am I correct?
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, there were 3 proposals, and there was one that was rejected. So there was actually
That
4
one was
proposals.
okay, so then there was the fourth one that was rejected.
Right,
Okay,
correct.
that one was rejected because it didn't go up. And then, I also read on the third proposal that it didn't necessarily didn't meet all the points, the third one.
Madam Chair,
Okay.
members of the
Chris isn't here, so this
think,
is what's making it difficult.
our procurement officer is here, Gretchen Wolf.
So then the second one, the second proposal, I was asked why the second proposal wasn't chosen, because they were offering more money, more dollars. It was going to generate more. My understanding in the second proposal is what they were asking for was a GIPLET. And in the second proposal, they were asking for a GIPLET, and it was going to cost the city actually more in the long run. And that's why proposal 1 was selected.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So you are correct that the proposers all had a different type of business deal that they were asking for. The evaluation panel selected Electric Red Ventures as the top proposer in the 2 that they were the top proposer for were the return to the city as well as the concept to activate the site. So on this specific proposal, the proposal that's recommended by the evaluation panel, there was no request for city assistance. So in the other proposals, there were requests for city assistance, which would have meant a different type of return to the city. And the panel felt that a proposer that was just paying us the required amount with no request for assistance was the best option.
Okay. I just wanted to get that out on the record because I was asked those questions, and so I did my research and wanted to put it out on the record as to how this proposal was number one. Okay. I have requests to speak, but I think we probably should do the presentation, and then we could.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the subcommittee, with me today, obviously we have Mario, our Deputy City Manager, Jesus Sapien, Public Transit Director, Nathan Wright, our Program Manager, Gretchen Wolf, our Procurement Officer. Also in the audience, we do have a representative of Metastar, our recommended proposer, and Nick Wood, who is the attorney with the development team. With that, I'll hand it off to Nate to run through the presentation.
Thank you, Eric. Chair, members of the subcommittee, the site, as you're all familiar with, is one of our best sites in the city, right at Central and Van Buren. It's about 2.5 acres, adjacent to our flagship Civic Space Park, ASU, and other downtown cultural amenities. The site has currently 9 bus stops and 2 light rail stops. And between the bus and the light rail at this site and adjacent to the site, there's over 2 million boardings and alightings each year. So a very busy transit center. And it's operated that way since 1997, when the FTA helped us to acquire and construct the current transit center for bus operations. And then in 2008, 2 light rail stations opened on Central and First Avenue. At that point, as we were coming out of the recession, the FTA began to emphasize joint development. Our public transit department was looking for other sources of revenue and increased ridership. And we started to field interest from the private sector to redevelop the site. And that led to the first RFP being issued in 2013. Unfortunately, that developer passed away, and the RFP was mutually terminated. And then after working with public transit for some time, the timing was right again to issue the RFP. That happened in June, and in October we had a great diverse panel that met and discussed those proposals that we were talking about, and they selected Electric Red Ventures LLC. And Electric Red is a wholly owned subsidiary of Metastar Corporation. They're a development company out of Houston. Manzur Hirani, their owner and CEO, has developed everything from hospitals to hotels nationwide for over 40 years. They've brought together a great national team with Greystar, the nation's largest multifamily developer and second largest student housing developer. And Pogue, who manages millions of square feet of retail across the country, and Intercontinental Hotel Group, which is planning a flag in downtown that is currently not in our downtown area. This rendering, those are all depictions in different cities. This is from Houston, the Texas Medical Center, and it includes 3 of the 4 partners with Metastar, Greystar, and Intercontinental Hotels. They've also selected a great local development team that has all done work here in the city of Phoenix, in our downtown and along light rail. Some familiar faces with Nick Wood and Golden Evans, Krista Shepard and her team. They've done an amazing job, and I think that'll come through as I talk through this site. This rendering is looking from the ASU campus towards the southwest. You see on your left is a 30-story tower, and on your right is an 18-story tower. Down below the 18-story tower is a 9,000 square foot transit center used for office, badging, or ticketing, security. B is 300 market rate apartments with a rooftop amenity deck. Below the apartments would be a 150 key boutique hotel and restaurant. And below that would be about 35,000 square feet of unique office space. Below the office, the ground floor is a professionally curated and managed retail, restaurant, and grocery. F is a shade structure that goes across the Polk alignment, tying into the park that the developer has desires to activate with events and other activities. The 18-story tower is a student housing tower with 600 beds and a rooftop amenity deck. And also on top of the office tower is a pool and landscape garden used as amenity for the residents and the hotel guests. Something that was very important to the developer was the tie-in to the park. And the developer and the architect have spent countless hours studying how to tie the park into the development, and ultimately made the decision to underground the parking. So there's 3 floors of underground parking. It's very costly, but it really makes this project work well. And you can see the landscaping tying into the park. They've done a good job of tying that in, as well as the shade across the polk alignment into the park to the existing shade structures. Here's a site plan looking from the top at the finished project. The developer has committed to work with public transit to put back all the current bus stops. And something that really appealed to the panel was the scale and the manageability of the site plan. That was something very important to our Citizens Transportation Commission. They liked how porous the site was and how people could move across it. Here is a ground floor view looking to the west. In the orange is the new public transit center. You see the shade, the seating, the landscaping, the water features, all meant to be amenities for the transit rider.
If I may, Madam Chair, just chime in just for a minute. You made the point, Nathan, about the Citizens Transportation Commission. As this RFP was being developed and talked about and went through that commission, that it was very important to the commission that the RFP include language protecting this site as a transit center and making sure that that site continued to function as a transit center. And you can see that this site plan does account for that, keeping those buses on the bus lane and on Polk, so that it doesn't push those buses out to First Avenue and Central Avenue. And again, I want to recognize the late Congressman Ed Pastor, who really showed the strongest leadership in that regard on the commission about protecting the transit operations at this site. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. Here's another view from the second floor, looking towards the park from the office, the second floor office space. There's a lush landscaping kind of throughout, really tying in the park. This is another view looking down Central. All the ground floor retail is really meant to be amenities for the downtown resident worker, making downtown living convenient.
Nate, if you could go back one more second.
Yes.
Just want to highlight one additional factor, is that through the community engagement process, as well as the feedback we learned during the first RFP process, this proposal also did a number of things to try to make sure that the site was very porous and connective. The prior project had kind of pushed things around the outside. This development plan is actually trying to propose things to move the pedestrian flow and bicycle flow to move not only around the site but through the site. So they're making the ability for it to move around at different levels, and also the evaluation panel really liked the integration between trying to include the light rail stations and the bus stops into that ground floor plane. So just wanted to highlight those other elements.
That's a great point, and they've really worked hard to create dynamic storefronts on all sides of the project, so there's really no back of house or back door.
So there's connectivity from Central Avenue all the way to First. Is that what I'm hearing?
That is correct.
Okay.
Essentially, Madam Chair, it goes from where the dot is, between the 2 light rail stations. It will cut horizontally through the site. There's actually a corridor that they're creating that would be on the north side of the corridor. You have the transit offices, you have a corridor, and then student housing and retail and the apartment entries on either side of that corridor. So you can, we don't see that. Actually, the image on your left is the image going east to west through the middle of the site.
Thank you.
Some of the proposal highlights, of course, the large private development, and because of the FTA interest, there's a 99-year ground lease on the property. It's not a G-plat. Then the annual lease payments that will go towards the public transit department, and just the large mix of uses that are being proposed. This is a single-phase construction in that the construction will all begin at the same time. However, at different points, different portions of the project will open. some of the estimated benefits, obviously the new 9,000 square foot Central Station Transit Center. Very excited about that. The increased ridership through the residents, hotel guests, students. Then just the high-rise transit-oriented development along our light rail system. Then the additional revenue for transit operations over the 99 years, just a stable source of revenue to increase their operations. And then the approximately $231 million capital investment with no city assistance being requested.
Wow.
And of course, in economic development, we really like the new jobs that will be coming to this site. Since October, when Electric Red was selected, we've been busy going out to many community groups. We met with 7 adjacent property owners, just receiving feedback. And if approved on the 17th, we will then work to get the agreements in a final form and take them to the Federal Transit Administration for their sign-off and approval. With that. Any questions?
Are there any questions? I know when I sat on the Transportation Committee, and when this first proposal came through, I was very adamant. I didn't get it, but I was very adamant about that being a transit site, and that operate as a transit site, and not pushing the buses off onto Central, when we're using Central as a connectivity of moving traffic in and out of downtown. When that proposal went through, that's not what happened. And so we had a second opportunity to really look at that site again. And it was very interesting the second time around because the transit Transit and Economic Development came to me and said, we really think you're, I'm going to say the term, correct, that we shouldn't be pushing our buses out onto Central and First because of what that would look like and how that would move traffic. So it's very interesting how we had a second opportunity to get to the point to really keep it as a transit property. I don't know where we would have really moved all our buses and everything else and really in the future have a space, but it's great to see that connectivity and way we're connecting all the different types of transit systems together and using light rail in addition to using light rail and the bike lanes too, because the bike lanes then is part of the connectivity. I know we didn't speak about it, but it is. So I really appreciate the great work where it landed. I have public comment cards, and Brendan Walsh is neutral.
Morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Nice to see you all. I just wanted to say that my name is Brendan Walsh. I'm the Executive Director of CASE, Central Arizonans for a Sustainable Economy. We're a community organization that works to raise working and living standards for low-wage workers in Phoenix and the surrounding cities. So So I did want to say that my concern, we have a concern with the project, mainly the lack of affordable housing in the project. We have learned that recently, the executive director of the Housing Authority of Maricopa County has stated the lack of affordable housing in our community is in a crisis situation. Rents, the average rent, we just learned from a recent Arizona Republic article, the average rent has gone in Phoenix from $800 to $1,100 a month. And downtown core, there are no workforce housing units at all, and the average rent is up to $1,600 a month. And as a group that works with people who work downtown, the idea that they can't live anywhere near their work, that they have to take the bus in from the west side or other places and pay $60 a month or $70 a month for parking on top of that, is a real challenge for some of the constituents that we represent. So the city, we know that the city council in many recent developments has worked very hard to push for the inclusion of affordable housing units. Particularly, we know on the Duo and Fillmore project, the Palm Court Tower project, and in others that Chairwoman Pastor, among others, has really been pushing very hard for affordable housing in all these projects. So unfortunately, the development details submitted by Metastar do not indicate that there's any affordable housing units. There is much student housing, obviously, but no affordable housing or workforce housing units. So I do think that it's important to understand that this is a public asset that is being leased by the city, so it is an opportunity. It's by a public park. It is an important opportunity for the city to be able to require affordable housing. So we think it's a massive missed opportunity for a project to move forward that does not have affordable housing. I just do want to say, too, that we are very disappointed and frustrated that the vote has actually moved from this committee to the Transportation Committee, because we've been speaking with members of this committee through the process to offer our feedback. And so it's kind of a bait and switch. If we had known the vote was on the other committee, maybe we would have also addressed that committee as well. So I just think that was something that we did want to mention, because we do rely on this process to be able to voice our opinions about the project as well. So I do want to thank all of you for your work on this project, and really hope you will do something to figure out how to make sure the project does have affordable housing included in it before it moves forward. Thank you.
Go ahead.
So in the RFP, was there any indications for affordable housing or workforce housing in that?
Chairwoman Pastor, Councilman Nowakowski, we did have an opportunity for people to propose not just how much are they going to pay to lease that, but also tell us about other economic public benefits. None of the proposers offered workforce housing, and you may recall that we did recently get direction from you to include that in all future RFPs, but this RFP had already been issued prior to that direction from you.
Thank you.
If I could just add on to that, the other primary interest when we were coming back through on the request to issue the RFP, the primary goal is obviously, because this is a transit site, was to first and foremost make sure we got the replacement of the transit uses and make sure the transit was integrated in the site. Was I wouldn't say we didn't rank these as the priorities, but it was probably one of the higher priorities. Second was to create the revenue stream to help fund ongoing maintenance and operations for transit and generate that revenue stream. Was creating revenues was very important for the transit system. And then third was more the broad category, and in which kind of Gretchen mentioned, it was creating that unique transit-oriented development project that had the mix of uses, which could have included that, but it wasn't specifically identified. And as Gretchen mentioned, we do know from the subcommittee and council's direction for future projects, we do know to have that affordable housing criteria in there as a part of the future criteria.
This RFP got released when?
The RFP was issued on June 25th of 2018.
Okay. And I'm trying to go back to, in my mind, when we decided to add workforce housing into our conversation. I want to say 4 months ago that we voted on it, or maybe less. I don't know the date. I don't know the exact date, but I know that conversation has been going on. It was just finally we were able to get it. We were then able to move it and actually put it in language. So I want to say 4 or 2 months ago. In between that time span, that's when we took a vote for that. Okay. Any other questions?
Maybe if I'm not sure if the developers may be open to some workforce housing or affordable housing.
I have more.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I guess it's necessary, Madam Chair.
No, just because we're on that topic, I'd like to hear it.
Is this on?
Yes.
Okay. Madam Chair, members of the committee. Nick Wood, Snell and Wilmer 1, Arizona Center, and I represent Metastar. In answer to your question, Councilman Nowakowski, we were recently asked by Chris Mackey if it would be possible to add workforce housing to this project. As you know, and you've heard me speak to workforce housing before, I'm a very big advocate of it. And my dad worked in a factory, and I mean, we grew up in that demographic. I actually did worked on the Duo project as well as the Palm Court project, and we did add workforce housing, actually at the suggestion, Madam Chair, of you and Councilman Nowakowski. And obviously, there's a tremendous need for it downtown. You know, there's many considerations that go into providing workforce housing, and it really comes down to a matter of dollars and cents. What we're all experiencing, what my clients are experiencing, is land costs, labor costs, material costs, interest rates. Everything continues to climb. There's also pressure on a supply and demand, a sense for, you know, how can you hold rents down to make them more affordable for, you know, a cross-section of demographics. It's becoming much, much more of a challenge. For example, this project will cost more than $200 million to build. If this was under construction 2 years ago, it would cost about 10 to 15% less. So it would be $20 to $30 million less. When you add to the fact that additional construction costs that are going to be incurred because of the transit element. Typically, you would take a city block like this and you'd put your parking above ground. Well, here, in order to accommodate the needs for the buses to run through the center, all the parking is 3 levels underground. I think you're all very much aware of what it costs to put underground parking, but those costs continue to increase the deeper that you go. In addition, it's a lease. So as a lease, you know, the payments will go to the transit authority. The good news is it's a continuous stream of revenue for the transit authority, which of course supports the demographic of people who use light rail and who use the bus system, which of course is very beneficial to the workforce and those who have the need for affordable housing. But with leases come additional expenses. By the end of the lease term in 99 years, they will have paid for this land 12 times. In addition, because it's a lease, like all leases, it has a useful life. You know, it's like a stock option. Stock option has a life, and as you get closer to the expiration date of the stock option, the value declines. It's the same thing with leases. There's a decline in the value. And of course, one of the things that was asked of us was to create connection to the park, create the shade, which are also benefits. So at the end of the day, you know, taking pen to pencil and not asking for the G-plate. I mean, that was really the deciding factor for us. I had a client who said, you know what, I'm not going to ask the city for any kind of assistance. I'm going to go this alone. Now, in those 2 projects, for both the Duo and the Palm Court, it was a G-plate. There was going to be savings of millions of dollars in taxes. So, of course, it was appropriate as a public benefit to give back something. And, you know, we typically do the make whole provision with the school districts. But in this case, those last 2, because of the need and the demand for workforce housing, we included those in those projects. Here, my client decided not to do a G-plate. The ad valorem taxes on this project will be almost $2 million a year. So over 8 years, that's $16+ million of tax savings that they've decided to forego and not request. So with all of those considerations, and Madam Chair, I'm sorry for the long-winded response to the question. But
Nick, you don't want me to become a teacher right now.
No, I don't. Although most of my family are
Is it a
teachers.
yes or no?
Yes. But I am a professor at AC Law
Okay.
School. But the answer is no, we cannot.
Okay. Thank you. Donna Schneider.
Good, still morning, right? Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee. My name is Dana Schneider. No worries. I am an organizing director with Unite Here, which is a labor union that represents a few thousand folks here in the city of Phoenix, including several hundred that work in this downtown area and use this transit center. So I wanted to speak a little bit about what kind of financial deal I believe this proposal is for the city. So the city of Phoenix received 3 proposals from 3 separate private developers hoping to bring about the redevelopment of Central Station. The project submitted by the Metastar Corporation, in my opinion, is not the best financial deal for our city. So the Metastar Corporation has agreed to pay the minimum annual lease payment to the city. Another proposal was willing to pay over $185,000 more per year. And I know there was some discussion, but even with the additional tax incentives taken into account, the city will end up missing out on over $32 million by choosing the Metastar Corporation as the developer of the Central Station site. This calculation is based on the numbers provided by the proposers themselves. So why would the city want to take a lower lease price for this project? The Metastar Corporation estimates the full value of its proposed project at $231 million. Another proposer estimated its project to be valued at $330 million, almost $100 million more. Why would the city want a development that is of lesser value? So these are just questions that I think we should consider. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Gretchen, I believe you can answer those questions because those were the exact same questions that I asked Chris Mackey. And she figured out the numbers, or she demonstrated the numbers to me, and regarding the GIPLET and everything else. So you're on, or whoever.
If it's okay, I'll start with just some of the summary of the evaluation panel's evaluation of this criterion, so you understand where they were coming from. So when they looked at the electric red proposal, they offered the minimum annual cash payments with a 2% inflation adjustment over 99 years, with the payments beginning actually at execution of the agreements. The second proposer that they evaluated did offer a higher cash return, but the payments would start at a later date when construction was completed, plus that proposal came with a request for GPLET. The third proposal also offered the minimum with increases every 10 years. Those payments would start even later. Those would actually start with the certificate of occupancy being issued. And again, they were asking for a GPLET. So when the panel is evaluating the return to the city, they're looking at the cash, either a lease payment or the purchase price, but they're also looking at all of the other things that create that benefit for the city. So the panel felt, based on the direction from council in the evaluation criteria, that the electric red proposal, which was the money coming in soonest without any request for assistance, provided the best benefit. I'm going to hand it back to Eric Johnson for a little more analysis.
Thank you, Gretchen. Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, to further describe some of the financial analysis, is obviously the panel doesn't delve as explicitly into the financial actions that the staff does as part of its review, but to get to some of the numbers that I'm sure Chris Mackey described to you, while the Electric Red Ventures proposal did have a smaller total lease payment to the city, the one that was the larger, the other proposer that had the larger amount being proposed, while it was a larger amount, it would have actually been a lesser amount for the city over the life of the period of the project because of a number of factors. First and foremost, the request for GPLET, going over that long of a period of time, we were going to have to look into certain legal issues about how we dealt with ownership of the property, but the GPLET itself would have lowered the value of the lease payments to the city by anywhere between $20 to $30 million over the life of that lease term. And then the developer had also requested rebates of other items such as sales tax, construction sales tax, and other rebates that they were requesting as a part of the proposal, which the panel evaluated as being a lower financial return, not financial return, but public benefit to the city. And so that's why, even though on a pure face value that number was a larger number, as part of the evaluation for the panel, it was a lower number. And as Nick Wood mentioned, the developer of the recommended proposer is not requesting any other additional assistance, so it's just the lease payment that's coming to the city.
Any other questions? All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
Very much.
We will be talking item 10, tomorrow's Involved Leaders Today program update. Okay.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee. Today, Neighborhood Services is so excited to be able to share with you an update on our premier youth engagement program designed to create the neighborhood leaders of tomorrow. It's called Tomorrow's Involved Leaders Today, or more affectionately as the TILT program. With me, I have Linda Dodd, our Deputy Director over our Engagement Division, who will introduce the rest of our team and give you some of the highlights on the program's goals.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, TILT is one of Neighborhood Services' most beloved programs because it invests in our future leaders. We are doing more than planting a seed in our promising high school students by showing them what it means to be civically engaged in our communities and teaching them how to further develop their own leadership skills. Today we're joined by Ray Jacopies, our Management Assistant to Neighborhood Services, who actually manages the program, and Maria Mendez. We're fortunate to have a former TILT graduate. We'd love for you to hear directly from our TILT students to see how they benefited from the program. Maria is a graduate of Copper Canyon High School, is currently a freshman at Glendale Community College, and I think she will blow you away with the credentials that she brings to the table. At the heart of TILT's program, our goal is to develop the leadership skills for our future leaders. We teach them how to learn to serve their community and also be an effective public speaker. In order to be eligible for the TILT program, you must be in high school and entering freshman, so somewhere between the age of 14 and 18 years old. These are high-performing students. These are not the at-risk students. And we also give everyone an opportunity to apply. To walk you through the impact of TILT's programs, I want to hand it over to Ray Jacopies.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, we have had, this is the 10th year that the TILT program has been in existence, and in that time we've had over 280 high school age individuals complete the program, representing 26 participating high schools citywide, and we promote student success. During the 10 years, the numbers representing the 287 graduates, we have 98% of our high school seniors graduate from high school. 68% of those who graduated are in college, whether at the community college level or at a four-year university. 3 of those who have graduated are serving in the armed forces. We have 1% who've completed a bachelor's degree, and we have 1 who's completed a master's program. Some of our partners include Junior Achievement, Phoenix College, Gila River Indian Community, Arizona State University, Grand Canyon University, and the Camp Colley Foundation. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Maria Mendez so she can tell you about her experience in the program.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee. My name is Maria Mendez, and just a little background on myself. I go to Glendale Community College. I play soccer and tennis, and I'm taking 20 credits. Yeah. So just...
That's impressive.
Yeah.
20 credits.
So just a little background about TILT. TILT has helped me so much. I remember the beginning of my freshman year, I was a little shy. Like, I couldn't talk to anybody, and now, like, it helped me build character as well as leadership skills. Some of the opportunities that I had with TILT was the JA Year Hire, which basically taught me how to manage my money. Other opportunities was to meet the city council members, which not a lot of people do. We also got to meet some of the police and fire representatives, which was really cool, like, as a teenager, because you're like, wow, like, one day I want to be like them. I want to be in that position, as well as other professionals from the city. TILT is also involved with community service, so we do a lot of cleanups, and we collect food from the homeless, which is really good. I know that TILT has impacted me in my life because I wouldn't be the person that I am today without, like, having leadership skills. So I hope you continue to support the TILT program because it does make a difference.
Well, congratulations. I'm
Thank you.
impressed. I believe you would be the person you are today. I think TILT probably helped nurture you and provide you the skills. Leadership is within, and so we just offered you some of the skills or demonstrated how to go about doing it. But Congratulations. What do you plan on majoring in?
Business management.
Okay. Well, see, now you know how to manage your money.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
Just to let you know, if you're interested in going in another direction, we're hiring for police. Sounded like you had an interest in that as well.
Yeah, I want to do business management with the side of law enforcement.
Oh, that's even better.
Yeah.
A specialty.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any comments?
So if there's people watching Channel 11, how can they get involved in this program?
Great question. So I know that all of you probably know some eager young folks who are maybe in high school that are high achieving, who may be interested in the program. As of today, we will be accepting applications. So please reach out to us either by phone at 602-534-4444 at phoenix.gov/NSD or send us an email at nsd@phoenix.gov.
What are the ages for Tilt?
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, it's between 14 and 18, so it's for entering freshmen into high school.
Oh, yeah, that's good, because normally it's usually juniors, seniors, so that's good that you get them young. And how many normally participate, or what's the max?
Madam Chair, we usually accept between 25 and 30 each year.
Okay. We might have to look at upping that. Okay. Thank you. It is great to have a great story. Thank you so much. Continue the good work. And then we have 2019 Fair Housing Month activities.
Madam Chair, good morning. I'm Tom Logan. I'm the Equal Opportunity Department Director. Joining me this morning as part of the presentation is our Neighborhood Services Director, Mr. Spencer Self, and Housing Director, Cindy Stoppard. The month of April is nationally recognized as Fair Housing Month. Our purpose in presenting today is to share with the subcommittee the City of Phoenix Fair Housing Initiative. In today's presentation, we will present the city's fair housing team. We're also going to update you on housing discrimination complaints, share with you our community outreach efforts, and communicate fair housing events scheduled for the month of April. Fair Housing Team is a coordinated effort between the Equal Opportunity Housing and Neighborhood Services Department. Housing discrimination complaints are the most underreported complaints in fair housing when compared to protected categories such as race, gender, disability, religion, sex. In fiscal year 17-18, the Equal Opportunity Department staff responded to 180 housing complaints. Of those, disability complaints continue to be the #1 fair housing complaint. As mentioned earlier, 180 fair housing complaints responded by EOD. This number compares to 151 from the previous year. We believe the increase in complaints may be attributed to our community outreach efforts. Through community outreach, we educate the community on defining what is a complaint, how to respond to a violation, and what are tenants' rights. Our citywide community outreach efforts include educational presentations and workshops led by EOD, Housing, and NSD. Quarterly landlord-tenant clinics hosted by our Neighborhood Services Department. Section 8 housing forums coordinated through the housing departments, and Equal Opportunity Department staff participated in crime workshops, regional unity walk, and back-to-school community fair. Fair housing events planned for the month of April include Phoenix Pride Festival held this weekend, April 6th and 7th. EOD staff will staff an information booth at the festival focusing on fair housing programs, again this weekend, April 6th and 7th. On April 6th, prior to the ASU Race and Democracy Lecture, where former U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder will be the featured guest speaker, City Department employees will staff a fair housing booth at the Community Resource Fair, which will be held at Pilgrim Rest Church. Featured guests on local radio stations. EOD investigative staff, in partnership with communication staff, will discuss housing issues as featured guests on local radio stations that will be broadcast in both English and Spanish for our listeners. And finally, Fair Housing Workshop, April 18th. This workshop will be held at Calvin C. Good Building. Will be one of several workshops that are a result of a partnership that we have with the Southwest Fair Housing Council that is offered free to the public. Madam Chair, that concludes our presentation. Be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Well, there are a lot of questions. One of them is what we've noticed, and Councilwoman Mendoza and I were having a sidebar, was that the west side of I-17, I'll say, we don't see any activities happening over there and informing the neighborhoods or the neighbors of, or those that have their rights in housing. Or south of the river. And so I would suggest that, or may I suggest that that items are mapped out so that there's equity across all districts in all areas. I'm sure there's some, it's just not part of this report, but if not, then we see a gap. I think specifically in the housing area, because of there's a lot of multifamily in those areas and it's very highly concentrated. I can think of 35th Avenue and Camelback, all in that area where GCU is. There's a high concentration. I can think of in the Maryville area, south of the river. Can you give me a specific area, Councilman Nowakowski, south of the river?
We have all kinds of new development going on from 24th Street and Baseline all the way down to where the new freeway's coming in, the 202, the Levine and Estrella Mountain areas. So I think what we really need to look at is maybe the census tract, and let's find out where most of our minority community lives. And I think that would be a great start to look at where most of individuals that would be not treated fair for housing would need those types of training. I think Indian School Park is a great location, but it's not in those areas where I think is where the people would come out to those type of meetings. The other thing is in the Maryville area, I mean, it's starting to grow all the way up to the 202 freeway out there. So that, you know, that area would be really another big target. And I know that North Phoenix also has a lot of housing and projects going out. So I think we really need to look at maybe using our development, our economic development office, and find out where the new development of housing is going, and maybe target some of those areas also.
Go ahead.
And also work with NSD to find those areas, because I know you guys hear the complaints every day, and they come from those minority areas.
Absolutely. We get calls every day from our through our landlord-tenant counselors, providing information about, and we are a, you know, an intake process that feeds to EOD in that close partnership. Additionally, item 5 on today's agenda, you approved us to hire a consultant to prepare an analysis of impediments to fair housing choice. And as part of that program, we'll be also doing some outreach and going out to the community. Some of those areas that you just mentioned would be ideal to get survey participants so that we can find out what's going on and help target our services directly.
So I would like to bring you back. So I guess this would be, I'll go back to the agenda item, I guess, but I'll wait till it's agenda item. But what I would like to see is a mapping of where our highly concentrated multifamily units are, and across the districts, I mean across the city, so then we can then look at that and analyze where information is going, and if information is going there, and if not, then how do we get it there? So I guess that's an agenda item.
Madam Chair.
Councilwoman Stark,
Oh,
and then
sorry.
I'll.
So do you have brochures to help educate people?
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Stark, yes, we do. We have brochures that we hand out at the community forums, that we also hand out the landlord-tenant forums, and we make available at Equal Opportunity Department.
Because there's a lot of events that happen in March, bike rodeos. This weekend, Slope Fest is happening. I know there'll be a big presence from NSD there. Maybe it's helpful to have those brochures as people are walking around at these events, something you could share, and then they can get more involved. Just a thought.
Yes, thank you.
Councilman Nowakowski.
So, Madam Chair, also, if you look at our facilities, like our senior programs, Head Start programs, those might be some good places to have that information. Also, is there a place here where we gather complaints and maybe even look at where the majority of our complaints are coming from, or maybe even at the county and our state level, our counterparts there, to kind of get that data and information, so we're actually going to the individuals or the areas that really need this type of help.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
That is the last of our agenda. Are there any new agenda items? Obviously, I gave one. I was looking at the agenda items. I'm assuming we'll just go through all of those agenda items in, oh no, I'm way ahead. Okay, in May and June, because June will be, I'm just looking at them and seeing, getting them through. Are there any other items? I don't have any call to the public. Meeting adjourned.